Cardinals love longer. They let you eat it for all of life's most precious moments, big and small. That's why the expert cardiologists at Dignity Health Canada miss a beat. They work alongside a cardiology care team to get you through whatever comes your way. It's our job to keep your heart in tip-top shape so you can prepare for whatever greatness comes next. Find your doctor today at dignityhealth.org/ACHeart. Dignity Health. To know you can kindness.
Chicken fingers, they hit the spot. Then fries the 40 crispy Texas toast crunch, and they came off creamy rich.
It's officially baseball season. Welcome into today's edition of the Lunch Break, live on KDUS AM 1060, the KDUS AM 1060 app, and always the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel. Chris Schubert with you for the next 2 hours as we close the book. It is over. The 2024-25 football season is in the past, and yesterday we crowned a Super Bowl champion. And if there is a tone that I'm delivering that to you with, it reflects the tone that I think we all felt watching that game yesterday. So without further ado, why don't we just get this out of the way to start the show? Producer Dylan. It's potentially the biggest sporting event in the world when there's not like the Olympics going on. So yeah, we'll lead with it here today. A 40-22 victory that wasn't even that close. 40-6 is the true final score of the Super Bowl yesterday. The Eagles dismantled the Chiefs. I'll be the first person. I will raise my hand. All last week, the 3 times that we talked about it on last week's shows, I told you I saw this game going a very specific way. I did not think the Eagles were going to be able to do what they did yesterday. And so I have to raise my hand and say, I was wrong. I didn't see that. I didn't see the Chiefs being complete no-shows. I didn't see the offensive line for the Chiefs that was a problem throughout the year, but they always seem to find a way. And if they weren't going to be able to find a way, I didn't expect it to fail catastrophically on national television the way that it did yesterday. But it was a utter domination from the word go. After the coin toss, it was all Eagles. And I thought going in, three-peat was on the table, history was on the table. I thought we were going to have a very different conversation here today about where things stood in the National Football League. And maybe this makes me that guy. I asked some friends about this because this was the overwhelming thought that I had in the second half of that game, after the game last night, and then driving in this morning. I was overwhelmed with one big thought. And I don't know if it's because of the way we talked about the game last week. I don't know if it's because of who was calling the game yesterday. But Tom Brady would never have that happen to him in a Super Bowl. And I last week told you that if Patrick Mahomes won this one, if he got to 3 in a row, if he got to 4 overall, that Tom Brady needed to make room in the guest house up there in the penthouse suite. That's what I said to all of you last week. Tom Brady would have never allowed that to happen yesterday. Tom Brady would have found a way to at least keep the game competitive. That is the overwhelming thought that I had watching that game yesterday, is I now twice have seen Patrick Mahomes' teams be embarrassed in the Super Bowl. Now, it's not his fault, but Tom Brady, who we think is the standard bearer of the position because of all the championships that he was able to win, he never had that happen to him. The final score yesterday was 40-22. That is an 18-point crushing at the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, it was 40-6 at one point, but in the box score, 40-22. Tom Brady has lost 3 Super Bowls, combined by 15 points. Patrick Mahomes yesterday lost by 18, and it wasn't even that close. And so, again, I think this is a personal thing because we spent so much time talking up that storyline last week, and because Tom Brady was calling the game last night, that I view everything through that lens. At one point, when it was 24-0, I turned to some buddies that I was watching with, and I said, you know who's on the call, right? It's Brady. This would be something if the Chiefs were able to pull this one off with Brady on the call. Everything filtered through that lens for me yesterday, in large part because the game didn't allow me to filter it through anything else. It was Eagles dominance. It was the Chiefs being blown off the ball on both lines of scrimmage and not having an answer. They didn't have an answer for the pass rush. And oh, by the way, it was only 4 guys. And trust me, on today's show, we are going to talk about that pass rush. We are going to talk about that in the context of the Arizona Cardinals. But they sent 4 guys. They got home a bunch, 6 total sacks on Patrick Mahomes. And they made Patrick Mahomes yesterday look like a rookie quarterback. He didn't know where to bail out to. He constantly stepped into the pressure instead of away from the pressure. He was never able to get anything going. They showed the graphics coming out of the second half. What was it? They had like 23 yards in the first half. 23. They had 1 first down. It was the first play that they had from scrimmage. They did nothing. If you were a Bills fan watching that game, probably made you sick to your stomach. You were sick thinking we were that close to beating the Chiefs. We would have put up a better fight than they did against the Eagles. That's what you're thinking today. And if you're Washington, you got to feel great about what you were able to do against Philadelphia because the Chiefs didn't have an answer. I thought going into this game, with Patrick Mahomes, with Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, the guys that have been there and done that this team wouldn't get outcoached. The coaching advantage was heavy to one side. I did not think that the Chiefs would get embarrassed on national television, and they were. They were embarrassed. Now, it helps when you've won 2 in a row. It helps when you've already got 3 in your back pocket. You kind of get forgotten about, and the story today can be the Eagles, and it can be Nick Sirianni, and it can be Saquon Barkley, and it can be Jalen Hurts, right? All of those guys, great storylines. Nick Sirianni. How many times since the last time they were in the Super Bowl did that town try to run him away, try to get him fired? How many times did that happen? Saquon Barkley, number 2 overall pick, dominating in the biggest media market in the country, but can never take his team to the length that he was able to take his team to this past season because he wasn't on a very good team. In the offseason, he flips allegiances, changes sides, joins the Philadelphia Eagles, and has potentially the greatest running back season in the history of the NFL. Was 3rd place in the MVP and was one of the main reasons why the Eagles were even playing in that game yesterday, despite a very pedestrian effort, and we told you that going in. That was the one thing we got right on Friday. We said that if this game was going to go the Eagles' way, it was not going to be because of Saquon Barkley, that the Chiefs were going to key on that, and they did, relatively speaking. And Jalen Hurts, a quarterback that was cast aside by many, and I would throw myself into that camp. I did not think he was playing this year like a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I thought he peaked 2 years ago. I thought the best Jalen Hurts we were going to see was 2 years ago, and he does have his flaws. But yesterday, he did not hurt the team. He made the plays that you need to make in order to win a championship, and you can't take this away from him now, Super Bowl champion quarterback Jalen Hurts. And what a masterful roster construction job by Howie Roseman. Look at all the players on both sides of that ball, and you see different ways to acquire talent. There's free agency, there's drafting, there's trading, there's everything. And you look up and down the roster, and you see different stories. Jalen Hurts was a 2nd-round draft pick that was a backup plan. It was a good thing they instituted that backup plan. A.J. Brown was a trade to acquire a number 1 wide receiver. And you also had a really good number 2 wide receiver that you drafted in the 1st round. Carter, Nolan Smith, draft and develop players. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, draft and develop corners. And then you supplement it. Oh, we'll add Saquon Barkley in free agency. Oh, we'll add Nick Bond, and we'll utilize him better than New Orleans did. And he's going to get paid this offseason. There are multiple ways to build a championship team, and you saw yesterday with what the Eagles were able to do of how you can have your hands in all the different buckets of team building, and that can lead you to success. And I'm already seeing it. The Eagles are already listed as the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year. Stephen A. Smith this morning picked the Eagles to repeat as champions. I think we were spoiled by what the Chiefs were able to do to get to the Super Bowl 3 straight times, to win back-to-back championships. It is difficult to repeat. It would have been difficult to three-peat. You don't see that. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. As long as they have number 15, they're going to have a chance. The Bills As long as they have number 17, they're not going anywhere. The Ravens, they're still waiting to break through. Detroit's still waiting to break through. Washington, they're knocking on the door. It's really hard to repeat. 2 Super Bowl trips in 3 years. Nick Sirianni can finally call himself a champion. But I wanted to make sure that I gave the praise to the Philadelphia Eagles that they deserved here because they took it to the Kansas City Chiefs. But I couldn't help but think about the legacy part of all of this, of what yesterday does to Patrick Mahomes' legacy. Because he's got not just one of these, but he has 2 of these on his resume. You have one, you can chalk that up to a bad day, a bad game. Everybody's entitled to them. But you have 2 of those in the Super Bowl. You have 2 of those. And the last time it happened, you were playing Tom Brady. That was when Tampa Bay did this exact same thing to you. Pressured you, forced you off platform, and you didn't have an answer for it. And yesterday, Patrick Mahomes didn't have an answer. I can't remember the last time. It would probably be the Tampa game. The last time that somebody made Patrick Mahomes look like a rookie quarterback. And that's what the Eagles did yesterday. So credit to them. The game wasn't enjoyable, but they don't have to apologize for that. They're Super Bowl champions. Their fans don't have to apologize for that. But the game was over immediately. And you thought to yourself that it was 7-0 and 10-0. Oh, they're leaving the Chiefs in this because they were dominant from the word go. The Chiefs didn't do anything offensively, but you thought to yourself, oh, they're going to get hot. They're going to warm up, and the Eagles are going to look back on this and say, man, it shouldn't have been 10-0. We should have been able to grow that lead even more. It didn't matter. The Chiefs, I think the first time the Chiefs got into Eagles territory was the second half of the football game. I mean, they just didn't have an answer to anything. Doesn't make Andy Reid a bad coach. Doesn't make Patrick Mahomes a bad quarterback. It just means you got that day. You got beat. They had a better game plan than you did. They executed better. They exploited your weaknesses, and you just got beat. And truthfully, when you look at the Chiefs all year, they had avoided this scenario over and over and over again. Yesterday, they weren't able to avoid it. And you thought that the magic would continue. It didn't. It ran out, and it ran out on the biggest stage. And I always view the Super Bowl in a different lens because it's easy for me on a regular Sunday to throw on Red Zone, watch the Cardinals, watching football all day long, and you take your notes. Wait, Super Bowl, you're at parties. You're with other people, casual football fans. So it's interesting to see what those conversations were. I know the party that I was at yesterday, it was very Eagles heavy. They were not in on the three-peat. But very quickly, it turned to, well, what are we going to do now? Because the game's not interesting. By the time Kendrick Lamar came out for the halftime show, everybody was planning, what are we going to do in the second half? Are we going to break out some cornhole? What are we doing? Because this isn't interesting. This isn't fun. This is boring. And it played out that way in the second half. 480-864-1060. We love your thoughts on the game yesterday. And there was a Suns weekend that also took place. We can get your thoughts on that as well. We'll weigh in that here on the other side of the break because the weekend, well, it went about as well as you would have expected it to. That's next, the lunch break. KDUS, AM 1060.
I'm Dawn. This is my husband, Steve, and we're the Jacksons.
We've had 4 Fulton homes over a course of 20 years. During the building process is what always impresses me is the fact that the communication lines stay very open.
And everything was well organized. We had checklists. This is going to happen at this time. Expect this at this time. And it all worked exactly as they told us to anticipate.
The walkthroughs were almost kind of anticlimactic because the construction supervisors were so much in touch with me that we'd already discussed everything.
One of the things we really like about the Fulton Homes communities is they strive to make them a community, not just a place that you live. You become friends with people in your neighborhood. When we walk in a Fulton home model, it always feels like home.
Fulton Homes. You're proud to own, we're proud to build. With Cox Mobile, you're covered coast to coast, so you can call your friends anytime on that road trip from New York City to LA, even in, Franklin, Illinois.
Huh, what if I call from Franklin, Georgia?
Yep, covered.
Ooh, Franklin, Texas?
Uh-huh.
Franklin, Kansas, Missouri, Virginia, Nebraska,
Yeah, all
Connecticut.
covered. Cox Mobile runs on the network with more nationwide coverage than T-Mobile and has call quality you can rely on. Cox Mobile, the smart way to mobile. Cox Internet required. Comparison based on percentage of area covered by T-Mobile as compared to Cox Mobile from FCC National Broadband Map of U.S. as of 12/31/23. Learn more at cox.com/mobile.
Jim Rome here with your Rome Report. Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain II. You are having yourself a week. How you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm still trying to catch up. Everything feels like a fog.
What went through your mind when you heard your name called?
I was feeling pretty good about my chances. Leading up to it, I was feeling pretty confident. Everything was leading towards me winning it, just through the media and through the odds and stuff. I know people look through the odds, so I was looking at it too. But, it just feels amazing, man, to win Defensive Player of the Year, such a prestigious award. It's the highest of honors for a defensive player. So I'm very grateful for that, for sure.
Hey, Patrick, how much better? You're the best in the game right now. How much better can you still get?
I feel like, the sky's the limit. I just feel like I haven't even reached my ceiling yet. I feel like I got a lot more left in the tank. So, this is only the beginning of a long journey.
Talking to Patrick Surtain II. He is the Defensive Player of the Year. I'm Jim Rome.
Save on your next oil change at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Choose Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil to provide maximum performance and protection for your engine. Get a $15 gift card after rebate when you buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge for $34.95. Plus 2 times O Rewards points. Offer valid in-store and online at O'Reilly.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Getting your guaranteed maximum refund with TaxSlayer feels like discovering a refund tree has grown in your backyard.
I'm the refund tree.
Sawing off its branches.
Hey.
Feeding them through a wood chipper.
My branches! My beautiful branches!
And dancing in its refund rain. Start for free and get your guaranteed maximum refund. TaxSlayer. File fearlessly.
HD Radio is here for KDUS AM 1060. Check out your favorite shows and games on 100.7 KSLX HD2.
Two basketball games over the weekend. 1 win, 1 loss for the Phoenix Suns. Started on Friday as they took on the Utah Jazz. They did so without Kevin Durant. They did so without Bradley Beal. They were without both of those guys all weekend long. They had Grayson Allen on Friday night against Utah, did not have him on Saturday against Denver. And let's do this in chronological order because we said that you had to win that game against Utah on Friday. I believe it was a 10 with 5 exclamation points, if I'm remembering Friday's show correctly. We said this was important. You had lost 2 to Portland. You had gotten embarrassed by Oklahoma City. You had to win this type of game. If you wanted us to take you seriously, because again, the expectations for this team, the rest of the season, the play-in tournament is still on the table. This team is talented enough to make it into the play-in tournament. They are talented enough to be in the playoffs. They still have, up and down their roster, enough talent where that can be the realistic expectation. So with that in mind, you have to win games like Friday night. Now, there are some people that are upset that the game needed to go into overtime, upset that you had to get 47 from Devin Booker in 49 minutes, and that basically set up what we saw on Saturday. Here's where I'm at with this. The Phoenix Suns have shown to you nothing is easy. Nothing is guaranteed. So, yeah, you kind of blew it a little bit in the fourth quarter to allow Utah back into the game to force it into overtime. But haven't we seen enough from this team to know that this type of stuff can happen? And at the end of the day, they won the basketball game they were supposed to win. You put it in the win column. You don't give it back. You move on to the next step. But you didn't have Kevin Durant. You didn't have Bradley Beal. So your rotations looked a little different. Monte Morris got some time. Damon Lee got some time. Bol got 24 minutes on Friday because you are shorthanded when those guys are healthy. You had to get a little creative. And what I liked about Friday's game was the creativity that Bud had with his rotation because it allowed us to see some guys get a little bit of run. It was nice to see Bol get 24 minutes. It was nice to see Monte Morris and Damon Lee draw in a little bit. But I will tell you, I was texting with a buddy during the game, and I'm going to open up my text messages to make sure that I phrase it correctly. But at one point during the Jazz game, I said, without Durant and Beal, I felt like I was watching early era Devin Booker Phoenix Suns teams. At one point, the 5 guys on the floor for the Phoenix Suns were as follows: Monte Morris, Grayson Allen, Damon Lee, Mason Plumlee, Bol. On Friday night, that's where the Phoenix Suns were at. Those 5 guys occupying the floor together. No Kevin Durant, no Devin Booker, no Bradley Beal. It was Grayson Allen, here's your time to shine. And he did. 21 points in 36 minutes as a starter was key for them in that game. But without those star players, it made the rotations a little weird. So that's what happens on Friday. You win the basketball game. Not pretty, not ugly, didn't want it to go to overtime, hate that Devin Booker had to play 49 minutes knowing that you're playing the next night against Denver, hate all of it. But a win is a win is a win. You do not give them back, especially not with the way this team has played basketball. You take it, you file it away, you're 1 game above 500, you took care of business, we move on to Saturday. And then Saturday is what Saturday is. Devin Booker played 49 minutes the night before. You didn't have Durant and Beal again. You then also didn't have Grayson Allen in that game. Honestly, what do you expect the Suns to look like if I told you that Kevin Durant wasn't going to play? If I told you that Bradley Beal wasn't going to play? If I told you that Grayson Allen wasn't going to play? What would you expect? Take out who the opponent is. Take out that it's the Denver Nuggets. And I know they didn't have Michael Porter Jr. I get that. But they still have Aaron Gordon. They still have Nikola Jokic. They still have Jamal Murray. They still have a good roster. 3 star players in their lineup. You had Devin Booker, who, again, last night, the night prior, played 49 minutes. Had to score 47 points to avoid a disaster of a loss to Utah. What'd you expect? You want the game to be more competitive? With what? Now, you want to blame the organization for the depth problems? That's fair. But you have to look at the hand that was dealt on Saturday night. Everybody knew. You and I both knew when your head hit the pillow Friday night, they were not winning the game on Saturday. You knew the moment that Durant and Beal were ruled out and then Grayson Allen was also out, you knew the Suns weren't winning that game. So what, you wanted a moral victory of keeping it competitive? What is that going to do for you? It's still a loss. So a 1-1 weekend, a 1-3 week overall, a disappointing week. You didn't beat Portland on Monday. You got embarrassed in the third quarter against Oklahoma City on Wednesday. You took care of business on Friday, relatively speaking. You got the win. And then Saturday was what Saturday was, a 1-3 week. We said you had to go 2-2. You went 1-3. But you ended the weekend. We woke up this morning, and we are officially in this window now, everybody, where either before I go to bed or when I first wake up in the morning, let's check the standings. Let's see if the Suns have held on to a spot. And so as we start this week, and later on in the show, in hour number 2, we are going to talk about how big of a week this is for the Phoenix Suns. I truly think this might be the week that determines the fate of the Phoenix Suns season. I'll explain that in hour number 2 of the program. But a big week starts tomorrow for this team. 5 games this week. But we woke up today knowing the 5 games that are in front of the Phoenix Suns. And they are still in a play-in spot. They still have the 10 seed. So you wake up this morning, you want more from this team, you want them to play better, but they're holding on to one of the spots. That's all we should be asking of them at this point, especially if Durant and Beal are going to miss more time, especially if Durant and Beal aren't going to play tomorrow when they play Memphis. What do you expect that to look like? At full strength a couple of weeks ago, when Memphis wasn't at full strength, you couldn't beat them. You got run out of the building. Your own building, by the way. So I understand the frustration, and it's boiling over, and the trade deadline was handled the way that it was handled, and there's some frustration about the Durant side of this. There's frustration about not doing anything. There's a frustration of the Jimmy Butler saga and how that all played out. I get all of that frustration boiling up and bubbling over the top of the surface. I get all of that. But I think you're setting unreasonable expectations if you wanted them to play Denver closer on Saturday. I think you are setting unreasonable expectations or unfair expectations if you don't expect games like what happened on Friday against Utah to happen more often. Did you watch the 2 games in Portland? Did you watch the last time they played Utah? Did you watch the 2 times they played Washington? They don't take care of business. Even at full strength, they don't look at the nice, soft, squishy part of the schedule and take care of business and have a blowout. They have games where Booker and Durant have to play heavy minutes and lead them to a victory. They don't do that. Brooklyn on the road during the last road trip is the last game that we can point to where they walked into the building knowing they were playing an opponent that they were better than and took care of business and was able to ease off the gas pedal in the second half. But other than that, where's the resume? In fact, the resume points you that Friday is just the norm. And if you want to be upset by that, that's fine. There's been 52 games. You have a big enough sample size at this point to not be surprised by that, to know and expect what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is the Suns are going to play these games close because at the end of the day, the Suns are an average basketball team. They are an average basketball team that has the talent to be more. They are an average basketball team that can be more. But right now, they are an average 500 basketball team. That's what they are. And now on top of it, you don't have Durant and you don't have Beal right now. So what more can you expect? You got a superhero performance from Devin Booker to make sure we're not talking about an 0-2 weekend, to make sure that I'm not the one raging at them losing to Utah. This is what the rest of the season is going to be, everybody. So just buckle up now. They are not going to handle opponents. They've got 2 of them this week in Chicago and Toronto. I'm warning you now on Monday, before we even get to the weekend where those games are going to be played. They're going to be close in the fourth quarter. It's just the way the Suns have been playing basketball this year. At some point, your record says what you are. The Suns are an average 500 basketball team that play these close games. They're no better than the teams that they're playing. They're not. They play down to the level of their competition regularly. It's part of the reason why they're in this mess in the first place. Coming up on the other side of the break, is the relationship between Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns savable, or are we all just barreling towards an impending breakup? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060.
Need social information about KDUS AM 1060? Try KDUS1060.com, at KDUS AM 1060 on Twitter, and Facebook.com/KDUS AM 1060.
A noisy garage door is a cry for help that often requires only simple maintenance. However, if left untreated, could lead to costly repairs. Hi, I'm Tommy Mello from A1 Garage Door Service. Don't wait until a simple garage door repair becomes a major problem. If your garage door is noisy, if bugs are getting in, or if it struggles to open, your garage door is in need of repair. From simple repairs to upgrades, it's A1 from day one. We fix garage doors fast and with quality parts designed to last a lifetime. Our springs, rollers, and openers are tested by running them up and down, open and closed, all day, 24/7, so you can feel confident with every A1 garage door repair. Replacing the bottom rubber on your garage door can have a huge impact on the number of bugs you see in your garage and in your home. Keep those creepy crawlers outside by calling A1 Garage Door Service today and receive the best service, best parts, and best warranty in the industry.
A1Garage.com, A1 from day one.
Call today and take advantage of our $29.95 tune-up special.
Sticks. The Hits, live at Celebrity Theater. 2 shows. February 26th and 27th. Tickets on sale now at celebritytheater.com. A trip through all their best. Don't miss Sticks Live. Produced by Danny Zalisco Presents.
Only 50% of Arizonans believe their health insurance will cover them in a major medical emergency, like a car accident or an unexpected life-changing diagnosis. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona aims to change that perception. AZ Blue often takes care of more than 99% of hospital charges in major emergencies, protecting you and your family from devastating financial consequences. To learn more about how AZ Blue protects its members, head to azblue.com/true story.
Superstar Car Wash presents Random Acts of Super. Today, we're hooking you up with a free Super Protect car wash. Just text DESERT to 27800 and get our premium wash for free. Stay clean, superstars. Terms and conditions apply.
A family called us recently after being told they had no case.
But we found evidence many others had missed and helped them win the largest car crash verdict in Arizona that year. Hiring the wrong lawyer can cost you everything.
Call the husband and wife law team first.
Hey, Mike Barrow from Barrow's Pizza here. The way we see it, family isn't just a cherished thing, it's everything. For us, that starts with our Grandma Angelina's family recipes brought over from Sarconi, Italy, like our sweet and tangy pizza sauce, 100% real mozzarella, and our fresh dough made every morning. And because every Barrow's is family-owned, never franchised, we personally make sure the quality's there at every location. So stop in and give Barrow's Pizza a try. It's authentic food from our family to yours.
The relationship between Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. I think it's safe to say it's on shaky ground right now. The way the rest of this season plays out and the way the offseason goes is going to be directly a result of how this relationship gets mended, or I guess doesn't get mended. There was a story a little bit after we got off the air on Friday on ESPN.com from, I believe this was Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst doing the co-reporting on this story. But it walked through the timeline of how we got to Jimmy Butler to Golden State. And we all know, because we lived it for the last 2 months, the role the Suns played in all of this. And I'll tell you, the big takeaway that I have from this story, reading this story, is, and we know how upset Durant is. There's reporting that he was disappointed to learn that his name was being thrown around in trade talks, that he wants to end his career in Phoenix and he wasn't involved in the process. And we already knew that can of worms was open. This reporting, I think, further emphasizes the state of that relationship right now, because the story points out that the Warriors and Suns had been working on, because let's back up a second. Saturday night, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, is the night in which Luka Doncic gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. And this reporting says that by that time, the Suns and Warriors were already deep into talks about a move that would have sent Durant back to the Bay Area. So before Luka Doncic had gotten traded, the Suns and Warriors were already having these conversations. Yet, Durant only learned about these talks when they played that Friday, which was January 31st. So remember, that Saturday, they played Portland. The night before, they were in Golden State. They won that game. We were pretty excited about the way that they played in that game. Went in there to Golden State, dominated them. There was that footnote of Rich Kleiman, Durant's agent and business partner, hanging out with the Warriors owner. We made note of that on Monday, but that was a topic of conversation. Well, that's when they first learned, reportedly, about that these talks were going on. And in the story, it mentions that the two teams had been talking since earlier that week. So they had been talking for multiple days at that point. And Durant only found out from the Warrior side of things. And so I have a whole host of questions about where we stand in this situation with Kevin Durant and the Suns and their relationship. How did the Suns handle this poorly? How are we learning that Kevin Durant learned that his name was being thrown around in trade talks? How did we learn that he learned from Golden State that was happening? How is that not coming from the Suns side of things? How were they not looping him in to say, hey, we're kind of discussing this. We want you to hear it from us. We're not really taking it that seriously, but it is something that is being discussed. You at least could do that. You don't have to include him on the entire process, but you could at least clue him in to the fact that the talks are ongoing. But no, he has to learn, and I'm guessing, I'm connecting dots here, but they're talking earlier in the week. Friday they play. Rich Kleiman, Durant's business agent and business partner, his agent and business partner, is seen sitting with the Warriors owner. You would expect it to have come up in conversation then, and then there's this surprise from Durant's side of things to say, whoa, wait a minute, this is happening? Because that's when they say they learned of the talks. And then the rest of that week plays out. The back and forth, thinking that the deal would get done to send Durant back to the Bay Area. And it was only when Durant kind of said to everybody that he didn't want to go back that the Suns backed off. So the Suns handled this very poorly. And they're in the story pointing out that they probably should have gone through Rich Kleiman on this. But instead, they set up this chaos for the remainder of the season. So there are two very important questions that I have sitting here on a Monday looking at what the final 30 games are going to look like. Can this get fixed between the two sides? And does it have to get fixed between the two sides? Those are the only two questions that I have right now. Are the Suns able to fix this? Is it fixable? And does it need to be fixed? I don't know the answer to the first question. I don't know how Kevin Durant truly feels. I'll tell you what, you start winning on the basketball court, you start making a playoff push, I don't think we're going to look back on this a whole lot. We're going to be focusing on a playoff push. We're going to be focusing on scoreboard watching. If the Suns are playing well, we're going to be focusing on that. I will tell you, though, you start losing a bunch, you have a bad week this week, you have a week that takes you completely out of playoff contention, where San Antonio passes you in the standings, where Golden State passes you in the standings. All of this stuff is going to crop back up, and it's going to be ongoing, and there's going to be leaks from all over the place, and it is going to be a topic of conversation. Because when things are negative, the negative press will find you. But when you're winning, there's a bunch of other distractions. And if Durant is going out there and he's balling out and he's helping the Suns win, he's helping the Suns stay relevant, stay in the playoff race, then we're not going to be inundated with this. But if this team continues to lose basketball games, our mind is going to start to wander, because at some point, I'm going to look into that camera. I'm going to tell you into this microphone, it's over. The season's done. It's not worth scoreboard watching. They're not going to make up enough ground. They're not playing good enough basketball. At some point, we could get there. And once we get there, where is our mind going to wander? It's going to wander to the summer. It's going to wander to the future. It's going to wander to, will they bring Kevin Durant back? Should they bring Kevin Durant back? Should they discuss a contract extension? And then we're going to bring all of this back. We're going to bring back the fact that they probably learned this from the Golden State side, not the Phoenix side, and that the Phoenix Suns handled this incredibly poorly from the word go. And then you get to a place of, I don't think this is fixable, because you're not playing good basketball and you messed it up. You did not handle it well at the deadline. There is a way to do this. Now, I'm not saying you go all Luka Doncic and trade a guy in the middle of the night. I'm not saying you do that. But you could at least clue him into what was going on. He had to learn it. And again, I'm connecting dots. I'm connecting dots that the ESPN story says that Rich Kleiman and Durant learned this only on Friday when they played the Warriors. Well, they were in the building and they were sitting with Warriors ownership. So I'm connecting the dots that they weren't willing to say point blank. And if that's where they learned it from, that's a really bad look for the Phoenix Suns front office. It is a really bad look for upper management of the Phoenix Suns. So can it get fixed? That's up to Kevin Durant, and it's up to the play of the Phoenix Suns. If Kevin Durant doesn't want this to be fixable, if Kevin Durant wants this to be a distraction, then it will be a distraction, and I don't blame him. But if the Suns start playing well and Durant goes out there and balls out, then yes, it's going to be all forgotten about until we get to the summer. We will at least press pause on this relationship coming to an end, at least until the summer. But does it need to get fixed? I think the hay's in the barn on this one. I don't think Kevin Durant is in the future plans of the Phoenix Suns. I don't think Kevin Durant is here next year. You saw how close they were to moving on from him at the trade deadline. How close they were to sending him to Golden State. Truthfully, the only thing that might have stopped it was Kevin Durant saying that he didn't want to go there. But that doesn't mean they won't trade him someplace else in the summertime. You only need to really, truly fix this if you expect Kevin Durant to be on this team in 2025. And what I mean by that is next October for next season. Now, you want this season to mean something. You want to try to make a play-in tournament at least. You'd like to make noise in the playoffs. So if you're going to do that, you kind of have to patch it up right now. But long-term, if you've already written this off, and again, I think the hay's in the barn on this one. You've already opened Pandora's box. You tried to trade him. You can say whatever you want about, oh, no, we weren't actually doing it. You tried to trade him, and he had to find out, potentially not from you, but from the team that was going to acquire him, that his name was in talks. You've kind of told everybody you don't like what you're seeing from this team right now. You've told everybody that you were willing to make a major change to this roster. And so if you were willing to do that now, what happens if you miss the playoffs? What happens if you're a first-round exit again? Don't you have to have wholesale changes to this team? And you're not trading Devin Booker, at least not right now. You can't trade Bradley Beal. We just did that thought exercise. And oh, don't you worry, everybody. In hour number 2 of the program, we're going to talk about that side of this because I think the Suns messed up in an even bigger way when it comes to the Bradley Beal situation. Making me ask a very important question that the fact that I have to ask it should tell you the answer. I don't know if we trust this Suns front office. So I'm going to pose the question to you. Do you trust the Suns front office? Should we trust this Suns front office? Because I'm starting to get some data, specifically from the trade deadline, that tells me that I don't know if they know what they're doing. And I'm the guy who told you on Thursday when the trade deadline happened and on Friday that I was happy with the standing pat. I was happy with the decision to press pause. It seemed like common sense was prevailing. They might have just stumbled into common sense. They might not have sought it out. But the Phoenix Suns and the way they handled the Kevin Durant trade rumors have created a fracture. If they want this season to be salvageable, they have to patch it up for the remainder of this season. Long term, I think that's over. But they need to call Kevin Durant into a room if they haven't done so already, and they should have done so already, and clear the air to at least set the stage for the remainder of this season. Again, this team's playing 500 basketball. Long term, those conversations happen in the summertime. But you have kept this roster together for this year, for this season. So you want to see this year through. And if you don't handle this part of it correctly, after you handled the last part of it so poorly, you're not going to have a season to save. You're not going to have 30 games that are going to be meaningful. You're not going to be in a play-in tournament. And we're going to get a jump start on this summer conversation. Coming up on the other side of the break, they just won the Super Bowl. So how can the Cardinals emulate their success? Well, there's one real easy way, but is it the right one? We'll talk about that next. It's the lunch break, KDUS, AM 1060.
But the Dan Patrick Show brightens your mood to work. The DP Show airs live weekdays from 7 to 10 right here on KDUS AM 1060, 100.7 HD2, and KDUS1060.com.
Breaking news, and this one is almost unbelievable.
Yeah, it's all about new customers at Bet365 because they get $150 in bonus bets when they bet $5, win or lose. And even better, bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, and player props.
There you have it. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Arizona. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. T&Cs apply.
Here's a definition of a win-win situation. Getting your windshield repaired or replaced and getting a guaranteed minimum of at least $100 all the way up to $375 cash back in your pocket. Time for you to check out New Vision Auto Glass. See clearly, drive safely. See what I did there? Give them a call at 480-210-9090 or go to newvisionautoglass.com to see what kind of incentives and cashback you qualify for. Look, the valley heat, potholes, flying rocks, it's only a matter of time until your windshield gets cracked or chipped. So why not get the experts to come to you, repair or replace your windshield, give you instant cash back of up to $375 and give you dinner from Radisho Grill. Wait, hold up. 30 seconds, $375, new windshield, dinner. You know what? I was wrong. It's not a win-win situation. It's a win-win-win-win. And it all starts with calling 480-210-9090 or going to newvisionautoglass.com, taking 30 seconds to fill out a form to get cash in your pocket, repair or replace your windshield, dinner at Rodizio Grill, and peace of mind. To me, the choice is clear. New Vision Auto Glass, proud partner of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Lincoln Park. From Zero World Tour 2025.
You ready?
Live in Phoenix. Footprint Center, Saturday, September 6th, with special guest Gene Dawson. Get tickets now at livenation.com. For more, visit lincolnpark.com.
Your caddy, Ray Adams, takes you beyond the 18th hole on Saturday mornings with Great American Golf from 6 to 7 a.m. on KDUS AM 1060.
The Philadelphia Eagles dominated the Kansas City Chiefs en route to their second Super Bowl championship, stopping the three-peat of the Kansas City Chiefs. And so how can the Arizona Cardinals look at the Philadelphia Eagles, look at the way that their roster is constructed, and learn from them? Should always look at the way championship teams are built and try to at least emulate them in some way. How did they get there? There should always be that thought exercise across sports. How did the Eagles get to the Super Bowl? Why did they win the Super Bowl? How did they do that? And what processes can we put in place, do we already have in place, for us to follow that model? It still be our model, right? Be the Cardinal model, the way we want things to work. But learn. See how other teams are put together. Well, it does help that the Cardinals have somebody that was on Nick Sirianni's staff the last time they were in the Super Bowl, running things for them in Jonathan Gannon. So you have at least that little footprint there. But there's a really easy way to emulate a Super Bowl team. You could just take their players. You could just sign the guys that were on that team in the Super Bowl and bring them to your team, because a bunch of the guys that were making the plays on the defensive side of the ball are going to be free agents in a couple of weeks. Josh Sweat, going to be a free agent. Zach Bond, going to be a free agent. Milton Williams, the interior of that defense, going to be a free agent. Those three guys, Sweat, Bond, Williams, all over the place. Bond had an interception. Sweat with a bunch of sacks. Milton Williams was causing pressures on the interior. I think he had a couple sacks as well. They were all over the place, and it kind of fits. What do the Cardinals need? A lot of help up front, a lot of help getting after the quarterback. Why not, in the Super Bowl, young players, why not take the guys that were just on a Super Bowl winning team? That's easy, right? Just takes dollars. But is that the right way to do things? And I don't mean morally the right way to do things. I mean, is that the best use of your assets? Is that the best use of what this offseason opportunity is for the Arizona Cardinals? I have a very strong belief that across sports, free agency is a complementary resource. It cannot be the main driver of how you build your team. Look at that team that played on the field yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know they have their fair share of guys that they traded for. They traded for A.J. Brown. That's a big piece to have acquired via a trade. I get it. They signed Saquon Barkley. They signed Nick Bond. They signed those guys. But you know what else they did? They drafted and developed Jalen Hurts. They drafted and developed a good portion of that offensive line. Devonta Smith drafted and developed. Carter, Nolan Smith on the defense, draft picks that were developed. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, draft picks that were developed. You have your A.J. Browns. You have your Saquon Barkleys. You have your complementary pieces via trades, via free agency. But remember, Saquon Barkley is a one-of-one running back. A.J. Brown is an upper echelon elite wide receiver. When those players become available, yeah, you explore those. Yeah, you make those adds to your team. But they signed Saquon Barkley as a complementary piece to put them over the top. Now, he was more than a complementary piece, but that was the idea, that he didn't have to be everything. He ended up being everything for them offensively, but he didn't have to be. They brought in A.J. Brown because they wanted another threat on the outside, but they had Devonta Smith. He didn't have to be the only guy producing for this offense. They had Dallas Goedert. He was a complementary piece. Now, he's a pretty good one. He's the number one wide receiver, opens up a lot of doors for everybody else. Free agency is complementary. Of the top 10 teams that spent last offseason, I ran these numbers this morning. Last offseason, the top 10 teams in free agency spend, total dollars allocated in free agency. Only 4 of the top 10 made the playoffs. 40%. Only 40% of the top 10 teams that spent the most money last offseason made the playoffs. The top 3 teams, meaning the 3 teams that spent the most last offseason in free agency, all 3 of those teams missed the playoffs. The Philadelphia Eagles were 11th in total spend during last offseason in free agency, and that included signing Saquon Barkley. They were 11th. The Cardinals were one of those teams in the top 10. The Cardinals were 9th in free agency spend last year. Yet, the Eagles didn't spend like a top 10 team. They draft and develop. So if you want to add Sweat as a complementary piece while also drafting and developing players of your own, if you want to sign Milton Williams for your interior while also developing Darius Robinson, I'm all for that. But you can't spend your way to success. You can't get all 3 of those guys, who I ran the numbers using Spotrack's market value. They have Sweat at 18.8 million AAV, Bond at around 9-10, and Williams at 12. That's $40 million you wanted to spend on all 3 of those guys. That would basically be a large chunk of your budget. That's not how you do this. You might sign one of those guys. You might sign Milton Williams. You might attack Sweat in free agency. We've talked about that link. Makes a ton of sense. Would be on board with it. That would be one of the free agent pass rushers that I could get excited about. But you don't pour all your resources into the free agency bucket. You're not going to spend your way out of the roster inefficiencies that this team has right now. It's going to be a complementary piece. It's why I keep saying you can sign Josh Sweat, but you better draft somebody. You better also sign another guy in a lower tier bucket, maybe take a flyer on somebody that you can get more out of them. You can't throw all your eggs into the top end of the market. You can't throw all your eggs into free agency. It is a complementary asset. The Eagles did not spend their way to a Super Bowl. Now, they paid Jalen Hurts. They paid those guys. They paid Saquon Barkley. But they paid Saquon Barkley when they thought their window was at its peak. They didn't sign Saquon Barkley when they're an up-and-coming franchise. They had already been to a Super Bowl. They had already failed in a Super Bowl. They were trying to piece their roster together. They were watching Jason Kelce walk out the door, replacing him. They were watching changing a lot of their defense out with the younger players that they had spent years drafting and developing, like Carter, like Smith, their recent picks in Mitchell and DeJean. Those guys that all made plays in the game, Cooper DeJean had a pick 6. It was a draft pick. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP, a second-round draft pick. Devonta Smith making plays, a first-round draft pick. The guys that were making plays in that game yesterday, not all of them via the free agency bucket. So yes, free agency is a tool. Yes, free agency is something that the Cardinals should use to improve their roster. Agreed 100%. And they improved their roster last year by using free agency. But it can't be the be-all, end-all. What gets you over the top, what allows you to climb the mountaintop of the NFL, is you have to be able to draft and develop. You have to hit on those day 2 picks. You have to hit every once in a while on some day 3 picks. You have to be able to draft guys and develop them. Instead of asking questions at the end of the year about a disappointing rookie campaign for Marvin Harrison Jr., I'd like to have conversations about how good Cooper DeJean was. That's how I'd like to talk about the Cardinals, the hits that they have, not the up-in-the-air nature of their draft picks. That's where we talk about the development start. The development stuff has to come next. So there's an easy way to do this. And I guarantee you those guys are going to get paid. Remember the Patriots a couple years ago and all the money they spent in free agency? What did it get them? The top 3 teams that spent money last offseason, all 3 of them, the top 3, all 3 missed the playoffs. The Super Bowl champs spent the 11th most in free agency last year. So towards the higher end, but not in the top 10. And only 40% of the top 10 made the playoffs. So think about that next time you want the Cardinals to just spend all over the place. And I know I want this team to sign T. Higgins. I want this team to potentially sign Josh Sweat. But it is not the cure-all. It is not an immediate quick fix. It does not guarantee anything. It can, and those moves can have an impact if you do all of the other work, the drafting and the developing. Hour number 1 of the program in the books. Hour number 2 on the other side. So coming up next, do we trust the Suns front office? Should we? That's next, the lunch break, KDUS AM 1060.
AM 1060 KDUS Tempe Phoenix and KSLX HD2 Scottsdale Phoenix.
It's time for the annual Santan Ford President's Day sales event. For 4 days only, get any new Ford for 1 cent above invoice. You heard right. All in-stock vehicles are priced 1 penny above invoice. That'll save you thousands off MSRP. And with once-a-year special financing rates, there is no better time to get the vehicle you want. Don't miss the biggest sale of the year. There's only one Santan Ford President's Day sales event. 4 days only. Starts Friday.
Restrictions may apply. Does not include specialty vehicles. See Santan Ford for details.
Hey, basketball fans, Tom Chambers here reminding you that just like in a game, you need a solid defense for your home. And that starts with a reliable roof from Right Way Roofing. Hey, Lori, as owner of Right Way Roofing, what sets you apart from the competition?
Our team tackles any roofing challenge from shingles to tile to foam roofing. We'll make sure your roof wins against the toughest opponents, rain, wind, and even those scorching summer days.
Make Right Way Roofing your MVP.
We're Right Way Roofing and we do it right. We'll always keep you watertight.
We're chatting with our guest, Always Safety First, 811 Megaphone Man.
Call 811 before you dig.
You never stray from your mission of letting homeowners, landscapers, and excavators know you should always call 811 before you dig.
Call 811.
Call for both small and big jobs. And 2 working days in advance?
811.
Any parting words? And I'm guessing they will be.
Call 811 before you dig.
Brought to you by Southwest Gas.
811.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. If you've been injured in a car accident, call America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, my mission has been to deliver more for our clients, to deliver more for you. Injured? Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
In the concert event of a lifetime, come experience the unparalleled, dynamic energy of one of the most accomplished musicians of our time, Carlos Santana. Oneness Tour 2025, Friday, April 18th, Talking Stick Resort Amphitheater. Take a trip through the hits from Woodstock to Supernatural and beyond. On sale now at LiveNation.com. Part of the America First Credit Union Concert Series.
Looking to sell your home? Hi, I'm Andrew the Home Buyer, and I love making it easy to sell your house. I'll personally come and give you a cash offer the same day we meet. And I'll beat any other offer. It really is that easy to sell your home. And no need to clean or fix anything. I'll buy it in as-is condition. Call me, Andrew the Homebuyer, today to get your same-day cash offer. Visit AndrewTheHomebuyer.com.
AM 1060 KDUS Tempe Phoenix and KSLX HD2 Scottsdale Phoenix.
Trust. It's a pretty big word. Means a lot. And if you don't have trust, what do you have? And I am left today, at the start of this week, wondering if we should trust this Phoenix Suns front office. I am left wondering if trust is a word that we need to remove from our vocabulary when it comes to discussing the Phoenix Suns, and specifically the front office. We talked about Kevin Durant and his relationship with the Phoenix Suns and the way they handled that in hour number one of the program. That's where the trust starts to erode a little bit, at least for me. That you don't handle potentially trading the biggest star on your team with, I don't want to say the proper kid gloves, but with the proper care that a situation that delicate requires. Now, I'm not saying you have to loop him in and have him sitting next to you when you're negotiating the trade, but you need to do a better job than you did. You can't leave him completely out to dry. So that's where the trust starts to break down immediately. But my lack of trust in this front office goes a little bit further, and it comes from the same story, but I'm starting to believe that this Suns front office operates with a sense of carelessness, with a lack of awareness, and it might have doomed their trade deadline. The reason why they were unable to get anything done other than Yusuf Nurkic going to Charlotte before 1 p.m. on Thursday might have been because not necessarily making all of the right decisions. So going back to the Jimmy Butler situation and how the Suns were always viewed as the top team in all of this, basically until the last possible second. I'm going to read from that Ramona Shelburne, Brian Windhorst story that I referenced in hour number one of the show, because I want to lay the foundation of why I do not trust this front office, and they're going to have to show me and earn that trust back. Quote, for weeks, the Suns tried to construct multi-team trades that would land Butler in Phoenix and Beal on some other team. But when the Heat would cross-check with the teams Beal would supposedly join in these constructions, they'd get conflicting information. What was the point of discussing specifics if Phoenix hadn't yet solved the biggest impediment to the deal, Beal's no-trade clause, end quote. So the Phoenix Suns kept going back to the Miami Heat with different versions of this, with different permutations of how Jimmy Butler could end up in Phoenix and Bradley Beal would end up someplace else. And what Pat Riley and the Miami Heat did was they checked them. They said, okay, and they called those teams, whoever they were. Maybe it was Milwaukee. Maybe it was Chicago. We know that those teams were linked at one point and then de-linked from the Bradley Beal of it all, but we'll use them for this example. And then when Miami called those teams, whoever they were, they would get a different story. They would get a different version. They would get this idea that, no, we don't want Bradley Beal. No, we don't want that contract. Doesn't appear like you're operating in the best of faith if you're Phoenix. If when Miami would check with these teams, they would get a different story. More on Beal. Quote, of all the teams Phoenix canvassed, sources said only the Washington Wizards and Atlanta Hawks would consider taking on Beal if he'd waive his no-trade clause to go there. The Suns clung to that hope for weeks, hoping that if they could improve their package to incentivize these teams to participate and other trades the Wizards and Hawks were working on fell through, then maybe there would be a path to a deal, end quote. The Phoenix Suns had a plan A, and that plan A was Jimmy Butler. My read on things after seeing this story is there wasn't a plan B. There wasn't a plan C. There wasn't a plan D. The Phoenix Suns had one plan at the trade deadline, and it was to get Jimmy Butler. And yet everything about the situation told them it wasn't happening. So you know what? They probably panicked a little bit. And when they panicked, they said, well, there's one way to get Jimmy Butler. We could trade Kevin Durant. And in that panic and in that chaos, they started talking to Golden State. And yet they didn't clue in Kevin Durant. And then we saw what unfolded on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and on Thursday last week. The chaos in the lead up to the deadline on Thursday is all because the Suns didn't have a plan B. Because the Suns didn't have a plan C. And because when faced with the pressure and when faced with the uncertainty and maybe the chance that the deadline would come and go and nothing would happen, the Phoenix Suns, instead of acting calm and poised and having a pivot plan ready to go, they invited chaos to the party. That's why I don't trust the Phoenix Suns front office. They didn't have a plan B ready to go. They didn't have a plan C ready to go. They instead welcomed in option chaos. And they clung on to an idea that we all knew was impossible. It would take too much work, producer Dylan, but I'm sure we can find the shows the day that the Jimmy Butler stuff broke, or at least the first day we talked about it on the show. And we could find the audio and roll of me saying it's not going to happen because you have to get Bradley Beal to waive his no-trade clause. It was the immediate reaction from everybody, not just me. You listen to anybody talk about this for the Phoenix Suns. The first roadblock to that deal not happening was Bradley Beal's no-trade clause. And while I wavered along the journey, I started to believe that it could be a possibility because we were talking about it so much. I always kept coming home to my original point of it's not happening because Bradley Beal's not waiving his no-trade clause. And yet the Phoenix Suns wouldn't face that reality until the last possible second. And then they operated the last week and a half of the trade deadline with all of the chaos to where people thought that Kevin Durant was going to be out the door, where people thought that Kevin Durant was going back to the Bay Area. So no, I no longer trust this front office, and I'm not sure how much trust I had in them to begin with, but I said on Friday that they made the right decision, that by pressing pause, taking the foot off the gas pedal, to stop barreling down the highway at 85 and to slow up to 70, that they made the right decision. And I gave them credit for that. Part of me thinks they might have lucked into it. Part of me thinks that they weren't operating with that clear mind on Thursday. That the only reason why we slowed down to 75 is because we were forced to. Because nothing else could happen. Because no other deal presented itself, because all their focus was on a deal that everybody knew from the get-go wasn't going to happen. And yet the entire time, you held on to this hope that you could get the deal done. And in the end of the day, you were made to look like the fool. How about this? Quote, the Warriors didn't like the deal. Either uneasy at the steep price Phoenix was asking for Durant. At one point, sources said Golden State debated acquiring Butler from Miami in a standalone deal, then using him as leverage in its conversations with Phoenix for Durant. This would have effectively blocked the Suns' long-standing desire to pair Durant with Butler and given some leverage to the Warriors as they angled to get a Durant deal done, end quote. This talked about a mega deal that would have sent Jonathan Kuminga, Butler, Valanciunas to the Suns. It would have sent some picks to the Suns. Wiggins and a first would have gone to Miami. Durant would have gone to Golden State. That was this super mega deal. But the Heat wanted some of the same things back that the Suns were looking for in the deal, and it just fell through. And the Suns were about to be played as fools because Golden State at one point considered, you know what? How about this? How about we just trade for Butler, and then you don't have a choice. Your Butler dream is dead. It's over. It's gone. The only way you do it is you deal with us. The Phoenix Suns were almost made to look like a complete fool. And while I think they ended up in the right result, I question how we got to that result. And my uneasiness about how we got to that result makes me concerned that with the big decisions that have to be made this summer, this organization has to decide this summer on what they want to do with Kevin Durant. And a lot of momentum pushes us in the direction of trading Kevin Durant. And so now, remember how upset and annoyed I was last week about the idea of trading Durant for Butler and how I said it would be a critical blunder. It would set the team back a decade at least. Because it is the one trade asset that this team has. And so if we get to the summer where they are going to more than likely do this, the relationship, not great, not on the best foundation right now after what you did last week, and the team not playing well. And so if we get to the offseason and this team misses the playoffs or they're a first-round exit, big changes have to come. And the one big change that you can make is moving Kevin Durant. And so if you are going to entertain trading one of the trade chips that you have, one of the trade chips that could get you the most back to speed this whole process up. It's the thing that speeds the retool up the quickest. You're asking me to trust in this front office's ability to get the most out of that deal. I ask a somewhat rhetorical question. It's a question that I ask aloud that will get answered in the coming months when we have this conversation in the summer. Do you trust the Phoenix Suns front office right now to get the most for Kevin Durant? Do you? After what you read on Friday, do you trust this current organizational structure? Do you trust James Jones and Bartelstein? Do you trust them to get the most for Kevin Durant if it comes to a Kevin Durant trade? They lucked into their position right now, and they did some damage in the process. And again, I thought they got to the right place. But I'm worried about them following through on that right place because I don't love how they got to the right place. They didn't make the decision 3 weeks ago. You know what? We're just going to stand pat. The Beal thing, it's not working out. We're trying. We've efforted as much as humanly possible. It's just not happening. We're going to back off. We're going to try to make some other smaller deals. We're going to get it. No, they were laser focused on Jimmy Butler, and they were laser focused on moving Bradley Beal, and the clock ran out on them. So do you trust them to get the most in the summertime? I don't know. I don't. So we'll have to cross that bridge when the summer comes. But I'll tell you what, I don't love the way this was handled. I don't love the reporting on this that shows that this Suns front office doesn't look like they know what they're doing. Doesn't give me a lot of optimism going into a very critical offseason. Biggest offseason for the Phoenix Sun in years. The biggest offseason in years for this team. What path they choose to go down this summer. And right now, I don't know if I trust the front office to make the necessary moves. Coming up on the other side of the break, let's get back to the here and now. This week, is it a make it or break it week for the Phoenix Suns? That's next. The lunch break. KDUS AM 1060.
The absolute best interviews and guests. Tune into the Dan Patrick Show live weekdays from 7 to 10 a.m. on KDUS AM 1060.
Hey, son, what you doing?
Looking around for jobs, offices, 9 to 5. I don't want anything boring.
You know, Brian's son is in the Phoenix Police Academy. Pretty sure he's not bored.
I never thought of that.
Check out joinphxpd.com and take a look.
Over 80 specialty details like detective and canine handler. What else? Dignitary protection, 911 operator? They have aviation and dive team jobs?
Rise to serve. Find more today at joinphxpd.com. Protect and serve with the elite.
Sponsored by the City of Phoenix.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. To learn more, visit one of our 12 Phoenix Sleep Number stores or visit sleepnumber.com.
Take advantage of thousands of dollars in SRP rebates and discounts on energy-efficient home upgrades like new air conditioning units, windows, ducts, and insulation. Save money on your energy bill while also making your home more comfortable. SRP's network of participating contractors can guide you from start to finish and maximize your savings by combining Inflation Reduction Act incentives with SRP rebates. Learn more at savewithsrp.com.
Pierce the Veil. I Can't Hear You World Tour 2025. Pierce the Veil, live in concert in Phoenix. With Sleeping with Sirens and Beach Weather. Live at Talking Stick Resort Amphitheater, June 15th. Get tickets now at livenation.com. Part of the America First Credit Union Concert Series.
Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. Big games are won in the trenches, when everything's on the line, when quarterbacks are supposed to shine. A great defense, great defensive line can change everything. And history has shown the best way to dismantle greatness isn't by outsourcing it, it's by overwhelming it. Just ask Peyton, Tom, or Patrick Mahomes. Seahawks Legion of Boom stole the headlines in a Super Bowl. Their defensive front made life miserable for Manning, forcing errant throws in a 43-8 demolition. Giants proved it twice against Tom Brady. That relentless pass rush knocked him down repeatedly and spoiled a perfect season. Buccaneers followed the same formula, suffocating Mahomes in the Super Bowl, forcing him to scramble for his life on nearly every snap. And last night it happened again as the Eagles racked up 6 sacks, collapsing the pocket and making Mahomes look average. Last night was a not-so-subtle reminder of just how valuable defense can be. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. It's inevitable. Rain, snow, ice coming our way, making driving a challenge. Thankfully, the experts at Tire Rack know a thing or two about conquering winter's worst. New tires elevate traction and braking, and they will keep you safe. Tire Rack sells only the best, like the full lineup of General tires. Go to TireRack.com/Dan. Build a tire and wheel package for DIY installation. Ship fast and free and backed by 2 years of free road hazard protection. That's TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
Hey, are you a whiskey lover? If so, you have to try the new Keeper's Heart whiskey. Keeper's Heart is one of the first to blend Irish and American whiskey. And it's really good. So good, in fact. Keeper's Heart has been recognized as one of the world's best whiskeys for the way it brings together the boldness of American whiskey with the smoothness of Irish whiskey. It's the perfect matchup. Keeper's Heart is a legend in the making. Trust us, you've got to try it. Drink responsibly.
James Out West brings NFL, NBA, MLB, and local sports talk to you Monday night starting at 7 on KDUS AM 1060 and the KDUS 1060 app.
Five games. That is what faces the Phoenix Suns this week. 5 games. Starting tomorrow night against Memphis at home. Then on Wednesday, they're in Houston. And then they've got a couple days off. Excuse me, not 5 games this week. Their next 5 games. They've got Memphis this week. Then they're at Houston on Wednesday. And then they're off until next Thursday in San Antonio and then Chicago and Toronto. But I look at these 2 games. that start this very important 5-game stretch for this team. Memphis, Houston, San Antonio, Chicago, Toronto. A massive, massive stretch of games. Why? Because look at the first 3 teams that they're going to play here during this 5-game stretch. Memphis and Houston this week, then some time off for the All-Star game, and then it's at San Antonio before Chicago and Toronto. A nice little soft landing spot coming out of the All-Star break, ending a little mini road trip when you're in San Antonio, and then you go to Chicago and Toronto. 2 teams that, let's face it, more in line with the Utahs and the Portlands of the world than there are the San Antonio, Houston, and Memphises of the world. Should be able to beat Chicago and Toronto. And so I believe this is a make it or break it week for the Phoenix Suns. And here's why I think so. Because you're playing Memphis tomorrow night, and then you're playing Houston on Wednesday. And I think if you can find a way to steal one of these 2 games. Now, let's face it. We don't know the status of Kevin Durant. We don't know the status of Bradley Beal. But I look at this next 5-game chunk. Chicago and Toronto, you have to have those. Not this Saturday, but the following Saturday and Sunday, right? You got to get those 2. If you can find one of the next 3, Memphis, Houston, and San Antonio, you can start to piece together a second half of this season over the final 30 games where I can start to believe that you'll be good enough to make the play-in tournament. Those are the expectations that we have for this team. The expectations that we have for this team the rest of the way is they are good enough to make the play-in tournament. They are good enough, and right now they have one of those spots. I believe they're still the 10 seed right now in front of Golden State, holding off San Antonio, holding off Portland, but barely holding on to the 10 spot. And you're playing one of the best teams in the Western Conference this week in Memphis tomorrow. And then you're going to play Houston before the All-Star break. If you can steal the Houston game or the Memphis game, one of the 2. 2nd seeded Memphis, 4 seeded Houston. So it would take you shocking the world. And again, you might not have Durant or Beal. Their status is still somewhat up in the air. They didn't play this past weekend. If you lose both of these games, if you lose to Memphis and you lose to Houston, and you go into the All-Star break 26-28, and then you come out of it with a game against San Antonio, who right now is only 3 games behind you. So that game could mean everything depending on how San Antonio plays this week. And let's take a peek at who San Antonio has this week. They play Washington tonight. That feels like it could be a win. You get them to 23-28. They then play Boston on Wednesday. You don't think that's necessarily going to be a win. So they're going to be 23-29 when they get to next Thursday, and they're here to take on the Suns. The Suns, depending on how things go, could be 26-28. The Spurs could be 1 back from you in the loss column. They beat you, you're 26-29. Again, assuming the results that we just laid out for you. You're 26-29. They're 24-29 with some games in hand. Would be a bad place to be. It's why I feel like this week could be a make it or break it week. Because if you find a way to go 1-1 this week, and you find a way to steal one of these 2 games, again, we are assuming that Durant and Beal will play in some capacity this week. The Suns may not do that, although I don't know if they really have a choice. If these guys can go, they need to play. They've got 30 games left in the schedule. You can't give games away. And I know it's Memphis, and I know it's Houston, and even if you have those guys, you might not necessarily be able to beat them, but you have to find wins. It took 46 wins last year to make it into the play-in tournament. You are 26-26 right now. That means you have to go, what is that? 20-10 over your final 30 games? You got to find 20 wins the rest of the way? You have to win 20 of your final 30? Let me check. I will just do our check of where the schedule currently sits. If it's still the hardest remaining in the NBA, but with one of the hardest schedules remaining in the NBA, you have to find 20 wins to match last year's win total to get into the play-in tournament. Now, it might not take 46. Let's say it takes 44. That means you have to win 18 games the rest of the way. Let's say it takes 41 and 41 is 500 basketball. That means you got to go 15 and 15 the rest of the way. And you have 2 against San Antonio, 2 against Chicago, 2 against Toronto, 2 against New Orleans, and those are viewed as your easiest opponents. And I'm sorry, I don't think those 2 games against the Spurs I would classify as easiest. I just watched you against Portland, who's worse than San Antonio in the standings, beat you twice. I watched you against Utah, a team that's worse than you, go to overtime. This is why I don't know why people get so up in arms about what happened on Friday. Have you not watched the way the team is played? And so I think this week, these next 5 games, you have to go on a run here that gives us something. Because we can play this song and dance where you hover around 500 the rest of the way and you go one game above 500, you go a game below 500, and you just bounce back and forth, and you are just a middle of the road team the rest of the way. And we are chewing our nails, holding our breath to see if this team can get into the final play-in spot. We could do that. That's one path that this could go down. Or you can find a pocket of games and you can show us something. And you can go on a run like you did earlier to start the year, where you beat Atlanta, you beat Utah, you beat Charlotte, you beat Washington, you beat Detroit, you beat Brooklyn, you beat Washington, you beat LA. Remember that stretch? Remember that stretch of 8 of 10? I remember that. You played a lot of bad teams in that stretch. Well, guess what? You've got, record-wise, San Antonio, Chicago, and Toronto on the backside of your next 5 games. You win those 3, and you find one of the 2 Memphis games that bookend this stretch, and Houston, you find me one of those 3, and you go 4-2 in that stretch, that's showing me something. You could go 3-3. You could beat Houston. You could beat San Antonio. You could beat San Antonio. You could beat Chicago. You could beat Toronto, and you can lose the 2 Memphis games, and you can lose to Houston. You can go 3-3. And that, truthfully, is probably the most likely outcome for this team. But you could find a way to win one of these games. And maybe it's not tomorrow against Memphis. Maybe you have a better shot on Wednesday at Houston. I don't know. But you have to, at some point, show us something. Because here is the way the schedule breaks after that. After those games at Chicago, at Toronto, you're at Memphis again. And then you have a back-to-back in New Orleans at home. So you play New Orleans on Thursday, February 27th, and Friday, February 28th. Back-to-back games at home. New Orleans, one of the worst teams in the NBA. So here it is. Between now and February 28th, the rest of this month, this is your chance. So maybe when I said a make it or break it week, let's call it a make it or break it 2 weeks. This is it. It starts tomorrow night. You've got 2 games this week. We don't think you've got a really decent chance in those games, but can you steal one? I watched you steal one against Golden State a couple of weeks ago. Memphis, Houston, a different level. We go into these games expecting you to lose. We go into these games not expecting you to win. But if you can find a surprise this week and then play San Antonio and then play Chicago and then play Toronto and then play 2 games against New Orleans, you need to start to build up a little bit of a cushion here before you have a stretch where you're playing a lot of good teams in a row. This is it. This is your chance. So we start the final 2 games before the All-Star break. This is the time for the Phoenix Suns to, if they're going to show us something, to show us something. We're waiting to get the latest update on Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, who are out both games over the weekend. They also didn't have Grayson Allen on Saturday. So you didn't have Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal for both games. You didn't have Grayson Allen for Saturday's game. We'll see if the injury report comes out later today of what their status is going to be for tomorrow when they take on Memphis. You don't stand a chance if you don't have those guys, so we'll get more into that tomorrow of what the importance level is if those guys aren't playing. But you're 26-26. This is one of the last blocks of the schedule that has some good teams in it, but also has the squishy part of the schedule, teams that are worse than you, teams where you can stockpile some victories. So I'm asking you to steal one one game someplace else to give us something for the rest of this year. Coming up on the other side of the break. Well, it's officially baseball season. So what is the number one storyline for the Diamondbacks as they head into camp? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060.
The Dan Patrick Show improves your mornings. The DP Show airs from 7 to 10 a.m., adjusting to that time change.
Okay.
Get your radios locked to 7 a.m. on KDUS AM 1060.
By now, you've heard all of our ads. America's largest injury law firm. But what does that really mean for our clients, for you? It means that when you hire us, you don't just get a lawyer, you get a legal army, almost 800 lawyers alone. That army includes an entire legal team, specialist lawyers, investigators, and a 24/7 client satisfaction staff. Just like if you were going into surgery, you wouldn't trust one person to handle the paperwork, the scheduling, the anesthesia, and the surgery. Have you ever seen a surgeon operating alone and without resources? No way. Why would you trust a small firm with your case? Your case is a big deal to us. When it comes to law, size matters. We're America's largest injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan. Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
The Valley of the Sun will roar to life this spring.
This ought to get pretty wild here.
Why is that, you may ask? Because NASCAR is coming to Phoenix, and it's going to be a weekend of good vibes the whole family won't forget. The best-in-class fan experience meets racing's toughest drivers for 3 days of action on and off the track, all surrounded by the beautiful Estrella Mountains. NASCAR weekend at Phoenix Raceway, March 7th through the 9th. Get your tickets now at phoenixraceway.com.
For 60 years, Fisher Tools has been the Valley's trusted source for quality, precision, and power. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, we are proud to be a local Tempe business offering the best tools and supplies for every construction job. With the largest selection of power tools in Arizona, from Makita to DeWalt to Milwaukee, we've got everything you need to get the job done right. And with our electric glove testing facility on site, you can trust the safety of your gear. Check out our 8,000 square foot showroom where we stock every tool you could ever want or need. We stock everything for industry professionals in the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, concrete, and power utility industries. If you help build Arizona, we're your best one-stop shop for all your tool needs. Come see why we've been the Valley's destination for trade professionals for over 60 years. Visit Fisher Tools today in-store or online at fishertools.com.
Hi, Luis Gonzalez here. Want to bet? Feel the thrill of Casino Arizona with 1,400 of the hottest slots and nonstop table game action. We make winners, no experience necessary. Join us for the best bingo in the Valley with daily sessions. Indulge in all-you-can-eat Eagles Buffet or enjoy fine dining experience at the award-winning Choya Steakhouse. Enjoy top-notch local entertainment, tribute bands, and viewing parties at CAZ Sports Bar, just off the 101 in McKellips. Casino Arizona, uniquely Arizona.
The NAIA, JUCO, Small College, High School Sports, and you. Listen to Vince and Friends with the Varsity Sports Show here on KDUS AM 1060, Saturday mornings at 9 a.m.
Well, yeah, the Super Bowl's over. So it's baseball season. It's time. Pitchers and catchers are starting to report all across the league. Rest of the team will be joining shortly. In the process of joining, we've gotten to a place now in baseball where a lot of guys show up early, right? You used to have just the pitchers and catchers and then the position players and everybody else showed up later. Everybody mostly shows up early at this point. And a lot of guys obviously live here. It's different when you are Milwaukee or Chicago, right? And that's your home base. For us here in Arizona, a lot of the guys in the offseason, they just live here. So you're here, you might as well start your work early. You might as well there's not travel you have to arrange. There's not, moving you have to do. Just a nice, easy commute, right? And so we're starting to see that process get underway, and we can start to shift our attention to spring training, biggest questions, position battles, to pay attention to, who's going to be the closer of this team, all of those things that I'm sure that are on your mind as we get ready for this season. And I am very excited for this baseball season. I think this Diamondbacks team is well positioned to try to bring it to the Dodgers. I don't know if they will, but I think they can. I think they are positioned well enough to bring it to the Dodgers that are, quote unquote, ruining baseball. Everybody's kind of upset with the Dodgers, and I get it. I understand. Spending a lot of money, just won the World Series, have a lot of great players. It can be annoying, but I'm not just going to throw an entire season away and say the Diamondbacks stand no chance. I think they can bring it to the Los Angeles Dodgers. MLB.com put together the one spring training storyline for each team. They had every beat writer that covers all of these teams from MajorLeagueBaseball.com write what the number one spring training storyline for each team. And obviously, as I do when these stories drop, I clicked on it, scrolled all the way down to the Diamondbacks, and I was, I think, surprised at what Steve Gilbert selected as his answer, because his number one spring training storyline doesn't necessarily align with what I think the number one spring training storyline is for this team. His number one spring training storyline for the Diamondbacks is how are they going to deal with their starting rotation? And he points out that they have 7 starting pitchers when camp breaks. They have Corbin Burns, who they signed to the big free agent deal. They have Zach Gallen. They have Merrill Kelly. They have Eduardo Rodriguez. They also have Brennan Pfaadt. They also have Ryan Nelson. And then they also have Jordan Montgomery. And Gilbert says, quote, it's going to make for some tough decisions this spring unless the Diamondbacks pull off a trade beforehand. And he starts by saying, after Jordan Montgomery exercised his player option for 2025 and Arizona unexpectedly signed free agent Corbin Burns, the Diamondbacks will have to decide what to do as they enter camp with 7 starting pitchers, not to mention other young starters with big league experience. And I think this kind of plays itself out. Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brennan Pfaadt are locks, 1 through 4. I think those are 4 locks for this rotation. Corbin Burns, you spent all that money to be the ace of this team. He's your number 1. Zach Gallen, free agent at the end of the year, but before that was the ace of your team. Now you get to move him to kind of a 1A, 2 role. No doubt. Merrill Kelly, consistent. I know he was hurt last year, but has been one of the best starting pitchers his entire tenure here in Arizona. The perfect number 3 starting pitcher. If Merrill Kelly is your number 3, you are building a pretty decent baseball rotation. Brennan Pfaadt as a number 4, a young pitcher who's still developing his stuff, still developing his craft, and was great in the postseason run 2 years ago, was solid for this team last year, despite all the injuries everywhere else. He was the guy that was taking the ball every 5 days for this team. I think he gets in there. And then you have Eduardo Rodriguez, Ryan Nelson, Jordan Montgomery. I don't even think it's going to be a conversation. Steve Gilbert says it's 6 starting pitchers in this camp. They really have 7. I do not see a world where Jordan Montgomery is viewed as, and I know what they're paying him, but you have to put his salary to the side. You have to put the $20 million to the side and look at the pitcher that Jordan Montgomery is and say what role is best suited for him this year. It's an expiring contract, right? The way we talk about it in the NBA. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so it is just money. He's not somebody that is going to be here beyond this year. So you have already spent that money. Put him in what you think the best role for him is, what you think best helps the team. I do not think Jordan Montgomery being the starter for this team is what is in the best interest of him and what is in the best interest of this team. I think Eduardo Rodriguez and Ryan Nelson are both better options for the Diamondbacks in 2025 over Jordan Montgomery. Jordan Montgomery serves better in a long relief role, spot start role, maybe as an opener. If you needed to pull that ripcord at some point, you say, Jordan, you got to give me 2 innings today, and then we're going to turn it over the bullpen, or 3 innings and we'll turn it over the bullpen. That feels like the best use of Jordan Montgomery this year. You watched Jordan Montgomery last year. We were subjected to those starts. It was so bad they had to move him to the bullpen. Now, I know he's going to have a full offseason. I know he's not going to have the logistical hurdle of moving and picking where he's playing and missing those. He's going to be able to hit the ground running in spring training. And so maybe he starts with an opportunity to make this rotation. But there is one spot, and there's 3 guys for it: Eduardo Rodriguez, Ryan Nelson, Jordan Montgomery. And I just look at the 3 guys that are presented there. And look at those 3 guys and tell me, that you can't find another role for Jordan Montgomery, that you can't find another role for Ryan Nelson, or have Ryan Nelson right there ready to go as the first guy up if an injury happens. You can't move Jordan Montgomery to the you can't move Eduardo Rodriguez to the bullpen the way you moved Jordan Montgomery to the bullpen last year. You just can't do it. So Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, is absolutely going to be the fifth man of this rotation. So if it was me right now, the five guys are Burns, Gallen, Kelly, Erod, Brandon Pfaadt. Slam dunk, no doubt. Ryan Nelson, you are the sixth man. You are the first guy up. If something happens to anybody else, Jordan Montgomery, you're in the bullpen. I don't think this is a question at all. Truthfully, my storyline to watch is who gets the closer job? Because the Diamondbacks didn't sign the big fish in free agency. They didn't get a reliever that was going to threaten A.J. Puck and Justin Martinez for those saves. So what are they going to do there? Are they just going to hand it to the youngster in Justin Martinez, or are they going to go with the veteran in A.J. Puck, their deadline acquisition last year, who was lights out the moment he got to Chase Field? That, to me, is a bigger storyline. Who closes games for this team's a bigger storyline. Justin Martinez has the better stuff, but he has the command issue. Do you put that guy in the ninth inning in those high leverage spots to close down ball games, or do you go with the veteran and keep Justin Martinez in the role that he was for this team last year, one of the main setup men? Which path do you take? You didn't get that third piece, so how are you going to configure this bullpen? To me, that is a bigger storyline. What does this lineup look like without Jock Peterson, without Christian Walker? How does Torey Lovello construct this lineup? Is Corbin Carroll still going to be the leadoff man for this team? Where do you put Ketel Marte? I have much more questions about the lineup configuration in a good way than I do the rotation. The rotation feels mainly settled. Burns, Gallen, Kelly, Erod, Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson, first man up. Jordan Montgomery, you're in the bullpen. Easy. I don't see a way where Eduardo Rodriguez is starting the year in the minor leagues. That's not happening. It contractually can't. He's not going to start in the bullpen. He's a part of the rotation. Burns, part of the rotation. Gallen, part of the rotation. Kelly, part of the rotation. Brandon Pfaadt has shown more than Ryan Nelson has to me. So that fifth spot or fourth spot, however you want to divvy it up, goes to Brandon Pfaadt. So then I have Ryan Nelson and Jordan Montgomery. Those guys are my emergency. Montgomery's going to the bullpen, and I would probably have Ryan Nelson start. I don't know if he has options left. It'd be an interesting thing to look at if Ryan Nelson has some minor league options. That's probably the easiest way to answer this question, because if he has minor league options, then he's absolutely starting the year in AAA and is the first guy up in case of underperformance or in the case of an injury. You need 7 or 8 guys. All these guys are going to pitch all year long. Ryan Nelson has 3 options left. That's what's going to happen. Brandon Pfaadt also has 2 options. He could go down. But I am not sending out a guy who last year pitched as well as he did and made 32 starts. I know he had an ERA near 5, but he was solid for this team. He took the ball every 5th day for this team. Was one of only 2 guys to make that are going to be in the rotation this year that made 30 starts last year. The other, Corbin Burns. So to me, more attention to the bullpen, more attention to the way this lineup gets constructed. But it's here. Baseball is here. No more football. We wait for the offseason here in a couple of weeks, but baseball is getting ready. And I am very excited for it all. Coming up on the other side of the break, how about we wrap up today's edition of the lunch break? We will do it with the leftovers. That's next. KDUS AM 1060.
Listener rewards for you with the KDUS 1060 app. Download today to hear all of the national and local shows you love. That's the KDUS 1060 app.
Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick six, three-point shot, underdog win, buzzer beater, shootout, walk-off, and absolutely every play in between is amazing. From football to basketball and hockey to baseball, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Arizona.
I'm John Morgan. When people stop me to ask, what's my case worth? Here's what I tell them. All law firms are not the same. at all. You see, the most important part of anyone's injury case is the firm you hire. The insurance company knows exactly which firms fight for full value and which firms will settle your case for pennies on the dollar. Our firm has recovered billions and billions and billions. $3 billion last year alone. There's only one Morgan & Morgan. Injured? Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
Breakfast!
Mom, my jersey.
In the dryer.
Mom, have you seen my science project?
Front closet.
Hey, I'll run out and pick up your mom's...
Already got it.
Oh, nice.
All right, out the door in 3, 2, 1.
At Banner Health, we're here to help you feel 100% so you can give 110. Because we know your health is what enables you to get where you need to go and bring everyone along with you. Banner Health. Exhale.
A noisy garage door is a cry for help that often requires only simple maintenance. Hi, I'm Tommy Mello from A1 Garage Door Service. Don't wait until a simple garage door repair becomes a major problem. We fix garage doors fast and with quality parts designed to last a lifetime. Replacing the bottom rubber on your garage door can have a huge impact on the number of bugs you see in your garage and in your home. Call A1 Garage today and receive the best service, best parts, and best warranty in the industry.
A1 from day one.
Have you downloaded the KDUS 1060 app yet? Download today and get all of your favorite local and national shows right on your phone.
Make sure you download the KDUS AM 1060 app. You can take the show with you on the go. Don't have to just be in your car. A bunch of different ways to listen to the show. You got KDUS AM 1060. You got 100.7 HD2. You have the KDUS AM 1060 app. And you also have the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel as well. And if you missed anything from the show, you can always podcast the show. Just search The Lunch Break wherever you get your podcast. Both hours of the show podcasted very shortly after we get done here. So you want to catch up, you can do so. Just search The Lunch Break wherever you find your podcast. We wrap up today's edition of The Lunch Break with the leftovers. All the stories that we didn't get to throughout the course of the show, we pile them all in here and we rapid fire through them all. And I want to start with some NBA news as Anthony Davis potentially out for a month. And when the trade was made between the Lakers and the Mavs that sent Luka Doncic to the Lakers, that sent Anthony Davis to the Mavs, there was a lot that was made of the injury history that Anthony Davis had, that he was older than Luka Doncic, that you were trying to win a championship, that you said you were built to win now with this move, but you were trading for an older guy and you were trading for an injured guy. And there was a lot of pushback. A bunch of people pushed back and said, you can't call Anthony Davis injury prone anymore. He's been relatively healthy in his Lakers tenure. He's been relatively healthy lately. You can no longer add that moniker. He lasted less than a game. He made his debut over the weekend and lasted less than a game. And then afterwards said that he thought everything was fine and it wasn't a big deal. And he might be out at least a month. The trade, it already aged poorly. It immediately aged poorly. Anthony Davis lasted less than a game before he got hurt. Less than one game before he is back on the shelf, reportedly for at least a month. They're having conversations today. I don't know where things stand. I have not seen an update, but there were supposed to be conversations that take place today in Dallas with everybody involved debating potentially needing surgery for this injury. You traded for that guy. You got rid of Luka Doncic for that guy. If he's out for a month, he's going to miss about 10 games or so. It would be, I saw a stat that Luka Doncic has had one stretch in his 7 years in the league. 7 or 8 years he's been in the league. 6 or 7 years that he's been in the league. Where he has missed 10 or more games in a single chunk. And Anthony Davis has done it like a handful of times within the last couple of years. The trade is aging so poorly. And what's making it worse is these leaks that are happening over and over and over again. You're hearing leaks about Mark Cuban not being involved. And then Mark Cuban is out there saying that he wasn't involved. And there's just all of these leaks. You traded the guy. if you have to continually justify it through these leaks, it makes you look bad. It makes you look like you are trying to justify something that you realize was a huge mistake. And it became an even bigger mistake when Anthony Davis lasted less than one game before being hurt, while Luka's about to make his debut. Also, did we see that the trade between Charlotte and the Lakers was rescinded because of something that got flagged in the medicals? And by the way, because Charlotte came up in this and the deal got rescinded, any update on when the guys from Charlotte, who the Suns got in the Yusuf Nurkic trade, are going to be here to potentially be a part of this rotation? Not to say that they would replace Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal if those guys are unable to play in Memphis, but it would be kind of nice to have those guys as part of the bench. You didn't have Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant the other night. Did you see the way the rotation played out for the Phoenix Suns? Did you see the guys that they had to throw in there? Wasn't very good. So anybody want to give me an update on when those guys plan to participate? Plan to report to the Suns? Are they going to join the team when they take on Memphis? What's happening here? So the Lakers trade for Luka Doncic, and they immediately are winners. And then it immediately ages perfectly for them as Anthony Davis gets hurt in his first game back for Dallas after looking incredibly impressive. See, that was the worst part of it. Is you're Dallas, you make the trade, you get ridiculed, and then Anthony Davis just goes off in his start to his Mavs career, and you're sitting back going, yes, that is exactly why we traded for him. See, we told you this was going to work, and now he's immediately hurt again and could miss to upwards of a month. They're barely hanging on. The Suns are one game behind them in the standings. In the loss column, I should say. And yet, they decided that this was the best move for them, and they're going to be without Anthony Davis for at least a month. Yeah, they're 28-25. They are a game and a half in front of Sacramento, Phoenix, and Golden State, who are all 26-26. They're a game and a half lead. And now you're not getting Luka Doncic back because you sent him to LA. And now Anthony Davis is going to be out for a month. I'm sorry, you can't justify this trade to me. I've had people try to do it. Oh, they were getting back Anthony Davis. Yeah, and how's it working out for him? They had Anthony Davis for less than one full game. And he's going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. It's being reported as indefinitely, but they're thinking it could be at least a month. So you made the trade because you thought this would help you win now, and now you don't have that piece to help you win now. While Luka Doncic is going to be partying it up, playing great basketball with LeBron James. I'm sorry, you can't justify this to me. And I know there was a lot of noise about you're disrespecting Anthony Davis. No, I'm just looking at the reality. You traded for an older player who has an injury history, and it has panned out exactly that way in the early stages. It has played out exactly how everybody was worried it was going to play out. It was a scoop yesterday before the Super Bowl kicked off that the Jets met with Aaron Rodgers, and they told him, or at least insinuated, that they are planning on parting ways with the quarterback, meaning Aaron Rodgers, if he is going to play next year, if he is going to continue his career, it will not be in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It will be someplace else. And so those rumors can begin to swirl of what Rodgers' future might look like, what the Jets' future might look like at quarterback. But the quarterback carousel, the quarterback cycle, so we know Sam Darnold is a free agent. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields are free agents. Could Derek Carr be available? What are the Falcons going to do with Kirk Cousins? Has anybody paid attention to the situation brewing in LA with the Rams and Matt Stafford? That's something that we should maybe keep an eye on. Because you got Kelly Stafford, his wife, going on her podcast talking about how she's not happy with the way things are being handled. Stafford wants to come back. It does not feel like that's going to end well. That feels like it could end in those two sides parting ways, but the Rams are kind of still in a win now mode. Rodgers for Stafford, who says no? But the quarterback cycle, the quarterback carousel can begin as the offseason just right around the corner. Has Kellen Moore officially taken the job yet in New Orleans? Can we officially put a close to this coaching cycle? I don't know if it's been made official, but all signs are pointing towards Kellen Moore to accepting this job, meaning we can close the book on the head coaching carousel for this offseason, which again moves us one step closer to the offseason, and the quarterback carousel is going. And you know that the draft cycle is right around the corner. Free agency is right around the corner. And so the NFL never sleeps. We might have a pocket of time here over the next couple of weeks where things are not as football heavy here on the show, where we're focusing a lot on the NBA and the Phoenix Suns, where we're paying a lot attention to baseball as spring training gets underway and covering the Diamondbacks at the start of the season. But before long, football is going to be right back here because you're going to get leaks from the combine. Then free agency is going to happen. And in football, free agency is not like baseball where it dribbles out over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. It happens in a flurry, in a frenzy. The Super Bowl parade is going to be for Valentine's Day. February 14th is when the Eagles are planning on having their Super Bowl victory parade. The other details have not yet been disclosed, but they will celebrate their championship victory over the Kansas City Chiefs with a parade on Valentine's Day on Friday. What do we think the weather is going to be like on Friday in Philadelphia in February? Now, they probably picked it because the weather is nice, but let me try to do some quick. This is always good when you can do this on the air, but give me the weather in Philadelphia for this week, just so I can see what this celebration is going to look like. Yes. It's going to snow the next 2 days in Philly. And on Friday, it's going to be 37. It's going to snow on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's supposed to rain a little bit on Thursday. And then Friday is the clear day where it's 37 degrees. I mean, I don't think it really matters. Your team just won a championship. I don't care if it's pouring rain. You'd be out there celebrating the championship. But they clearly picked the day with the best weather because you're not doing today. The party's still going. You got Tuesday and Wednesday where it's supposed to snow. That sounds like a bit of a hazard. Thursday, it's going to rain, so the snow's going to turn to rain. Not doing that. So Friday before it rains over the weekend, 37 degrees. I'm sure it'll be nice. The celebration will be fine there in Philadelphia on Friday as they celebrate their championship. And now the offseason can begin for those two teams. What are the Kansas City Chiefs going to do? How are they going to retool? How are they going to rebuild after getting embarrassed in the Super Bowl? And the Eagles, how do they plan to attempt to repeat? We've told you some of the free agents that are going to be available. Josh Sweat, Nick Bond, Milton Williams. Got some free agents that are going to be available this offseason, and they're about to lose their offensive coordinator. So some changes coming there to Philadelphia. And then overall thoughts on the Super Bowl that we didn't really mention. Feels like we've been going this way for a couple of years now. The commercials, there's not a single one that I remember. Not a single commercial from last night that I could describe to you right now that I thought was memorable. Now, maybe that was because I was at a party with people, but we made sure that when the commercials were on, we all quieted down so that people could hear the commercials. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing memorable. Halftime show, depending on your age, I know exactly how you feel about the halftime show. That's all I'll say. Depending on your age, I know exactly how you feel about the halftime show. I thought it was fine. Again, was at a party with a lot of people, so wasn't really like laser focused on the halftime show, but I thought it was fine. That's all I have for you on the halftime show. The commercials, nothing to write home about. Halftime show was fine. That is going to do it for us here on this edition of The Lunch Break. Jim Rome is coming up next. Producer Dylan, thank you for all that you do. That is going to do it for us here on the Monday edition of the show. We're back tomorrow. We'll get you ready for a Suns game and anything else that might happen in Suns land, but we'll talk to you then. See ya!